Hello, everybody, and welcome to the April 7th edition of Trips and Traps. I'm Andy Serling, as always, joined by Eric Donovan.
Thanks, Andy. We got 3 races to bring you just one segment. We promise we'll have more segments in the future. We'll have a double segment coming up, I'm sure, next week. The more turf racing we get, I think the better off we'll be in terms of finding some interesting horses to want to bet back on next time out. But let's get started here with You Jump, I Jump from March 31st, race number 6.
Yeah, I thought You Jump, I Jump is a horse you just want to sort of have in your list of horses to keep an eye on. And nothing specific. I mean, first of all, the horse breaks about a length and a half slow. Now, obviously, the 9, Timber Cat, who's behind him, had far worse trouble, and it's sort of overshadowed. But it shouldn't be forgotten that You Jump, I Jump got left in this race. But the other thing about it was, this was a first-time star in here for trainer Dominic Galuccio and rider Gary Richards, who doesn't get a lot of mounts. And this horse was bet off the board, opened up even money, drifted to 5-2, went back to 2-1, bet off the board. Does some running late, as we'll show. No running early, but it's also important to note this race was totally dominated on the front end.
Kill the Joker, a horse that ran well first time out, able to rebound after a couple poor breaks and set up position on the front end and go wire to wire here. A second place horse, One Turn Eddie, also chased, and there's our horse toward the back there, You Jump, I Jump, and we'll just see, you know, obviously out of the race, riders just kind of taking a little bit easy on him here and just hoping that maybe he'll show a little something in the stretch and improve for next time out.
Yeah, and he did pass some horses in the stretch. Obviously, he's not flying, as Eric said. The rider's not going to kill him at this point, but he's running a little bit at the end and passing some horses. This horse was heavily touted at the windows, and obviously others heard about it because Steve Asmussen claimed this horse for owner Maggie Moss out of this race. And I have a feeling next time we see You Jump, I Jump run for Steve Asmussen, he'll probably get out of the gate, and he'll probably win, in my opinion. Did anything major happen in the race that you have to note? Not particularly. But I have a feeling this horse is going to win next time.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I mean, they're not claiming this horse just on speculation of what they hear. You know, I'm sure they've seen him train in the mornings, too, and they know he could probably do a little something more than what he showed in that race there. So, you know, the fact that he took money in this race here and then he's off the claim for Steve Asmussen, probably going to be a short price again, but, you know, just keep in mind what he did in here and the fact that he really wasn't, you know, he really wasn't abused in the stretch to try to make up some ground when he wasn't going to hit the board.
Right. He lost any real chance he had at the start, and then he wasn't killed. He's better than he looks on paper. At least we think so.
All right, on to our next race. We'll take a look at the second race from Thursday. This is April 1st. And we're looking at 2 horses in here, the 7 Mighty Tough and the 2B Stone Turtle. We'll pause it shortly after the break here to show you where these horses are. And right there, that's Mighty Tough, and toward the outside is Stone Turtle. And what happens with Mighty Tough is the horse to Mighty Tough's outside comes in, bumps him a little bit here, and gets into, you know, kind of a bad spot early on. But the rider, I think, to this point, does a pretty good job into keeping him up with the rest of the pack and trying to get some good position. Right now, the horse that we're looking at, Mighty Tough, is only about a length off the lead and actually going to settle into a pretty good spot here. Stone Turtle still out wide toward the outside in the Fox Ridge Silks.
Yeah, Eric's a little more optimistic than me because this was not one of our stronger maiden races. I think the thing that interests you the most about Mighty Tough is, and here he is right in here, sitting third, Stone Turtle's back of the pack, he'll close the end, is this was a very contentious pace. I mean, these are not particularly good horses, and they were going very fast up front, and Mighty Tough had never shown any speed before, and they were 2 6-furlong races, but he was way out of it.
Yeah, Mighty Tough hadn't shown anything at all before in either of his races, just totally distanced in both starts. And here you see the rider aggressively chasing the pace, going after the pace 3 wide. He was at a perfect spot behind those 2 speed horses there. I didn't really see any reason why this move had to be made up here to go and duel with Brittany's Mr. Smee on the turn. And keep in mind, this wasn't off the turf race, so the quality of this race is a little bit diluted. But still, to make this move and duel around the turn with this horse, I thought was really poor judgment here. And I'm not saying Mighty Tough would have won the race with a better trip, but for a horse that showed absolutely nothing in his first couple starts to come back and run an okay race here to the quarter pole, at least after getting into some trouble at the start, making this move around the turn here. This horse will tire now a little bit, but so will the other horse on front, Bender's Mr. Smee, and there's not going to be much that separates him. Actually, 6 lengths separates him, but for a horse that's done nothing, I thought this was a decent step forward. And you see the other horse that we're looking at, too, Stone Turtle, totally taking advantage of dynamics. I know he's wide, and people will probably say, all right, well, he had a wide trip in his last start. Maybe, you know, maybe he can move forward in his next start, but dynamics really worked in Stone Turtle's favor here. I can't see wanting to bet him next time out. To me, Mighty Tough, a little bit interesting, long price. You got to see what he's running against, though. I mean, he could be in a much tougher maiden claim.
I'll say one thing for him. All that stuff, a little trouble at the start, gunned up like that. To hit the 3/4 for whatever it's worth in 111 3/5, which would win a lot of maiden races, it's not as simple as that. Right. But the point is, this horse, they're not very good horses, and right, it's not like you're saying this horse has to win next time out, and we'll see what kind of maiden fields they meet, and maybe it won't be a strong maiden race again. The interesting thing you point out about a horse is he did a lot more running in this race than he's ever done before. A ton more running, despite getting beaten almost 20 lengths.
Yep, and now we'll move on and take a look at the big race of the week, the Wood Memorial. Not really too much to say about this race in terms of bad trips, and we'll talk about Awesome Act, who, is the one that people are going to talk about bad trips. But you know what I mean? He stumbles a little bit at the start. He loses a shoe in the left front, which I think might, cost his performance a little bit in the stretch here. But all in all, I think a lot's being made of Awesome Act's trip in here, and I don't really think it was all that bad. We got the other horses highlighted: Jackson Ben in the maroon silks, and Eskenderiya in the Zayat turquoise silks.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of assumptions that have been made about this race that I fell victim to thinking some of them myself when the race first ran, but upon reflection are not the case. The most important thing that's not true about this race is that the pace was not slow. The pace was, if anything, a little bit on the fast side of even. It's a simple situation. It was very easy to do speed figures for this race because we ran a mile and an eighth race, the race earlier, the stake race earlier, and those horses run about 95 buyer figures like clockwork. And using that, it was very easy to do this number. The other thing was using that pace also made it easy to judge because the paces were very similar in these races. What happens is we run very few mile and an eighth races at Aqueduct on the dirt, on the main track. So we don't really have anything to gauge them against each other. We're not used to them. So people tend to think when they see 49, 113, they were crawling. Well, everything's relative in racing, and you're only crawling if you're crawling if 110 is par, they're crawling. If 115 is par, they're going very fast. It's all relative. On the inner, we get a lot of two-turn races to judge the pace against each other. Now, Awesome Act is under this stranglehold by Julien Leparoux. Okay, I get it. And a lot of people said, oh, why wasn't Leparoux letting him run? Well, if he let him run earlier and he made a big premature move, what was he getting in there? Wasn't he supposed to beat Jackson Ben anyway?
Absolutely. I mean, if he makes a four-wide run around the turn, people are going to be screaming that he moved too soon with them. So I think Leparoux does the right thing here. I mean, look, he's right off Eskendereya's flank right there to the outside. And I thought at this point he might win the race, actually.
Not for long, however, as Eskendereya. We don't want to get lost in the minutia of the race, but this is some performance by a very legitimate Derby favorite. He brings this game down to Kentucky. They better have their running shoes on because they will be here and he'll be here. It'll be that uncompetitive in Kentucky. I don't care what anybody tells me. This is a serious racehorse, and he is going to win the Kentucky Derby if everything goes well for him and he keeps it together because he's just so much better than these horses. Awesome Act, he just feels to me like the kind of horse, he has a short burst of speed. I mean, people were acting like he was killed by this slow pace. Correct me if I'm wrong. They went 22 and 4, 46 and 2 or 3 in the Gotham, and he was 4 or 5 lengths off it. He's not exactly a plotter.
No, he's not a plotter at all, and he should have definitely gotten by Jackson Ben there in the stretch. There was no doubt in my mind that at the top of the stretch he was going to be no worse than second there, and to not get by Jackson Ben, I thought that was a fault to Awesome Act. And we'll talk about all the things that went wrong in the race that people will point to: the slow break, losing the shoe, and the so-called slow pace. People will say, well, maybe all that adds up to a factor that maybe he could have been second there, but still, he wasn't getting close to Eskendereya.
No, he wasn't. And Jackson Ben's an admirable horse, and we're not trying to say, oh, he should have beaten him, he's not a good horse. But the point was his trip, and if he was as good as a lot of us thought he was, and myself included, then he should have beaten him, and he didn't. Now, maybe the trainer was not going really hard on him here, thinking, I've got the earnings, we'll crank it up for the Derby. But in this race, Awesome Act, I don't think ran that well. And as far as I'm concerned, Eskendereya established himself as far superior to any 3-year-old we've seen in the country so far this year.
I echo those sentiments exactly, and think of, like you said, if Eskendereya gets things don't need to go his way, things just don't need to go poorly for him in the Derby, and he should be very tough and should win the race, assuming things roll the right way for him, and he doesn't even need to get lucky. He just needs to have nothing go wrong in the race.
I agree. Not get severely unlucky. That's the way we feel at the racetrack. Once again, we love hearing your thoughts, trips, and traps at NYRAInc.com. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next week.